Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent uh-oh experiences in business.
Learn what their uh-oh cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again.
All right. Welcome, Cohesive Leaders. We are joined with a guest from down under, West Towers. Welcome to the Cohesive Leader Chat.
It's fantastic to be with you guys today, and just the line of the show, I love it. I think I've made so many mistakes and errors in my journey, so we could be here a long time if we unpacked all of them, but we'll try and look at a few.
Well, that'll be great. And down under would be Australia.
Yeah, that's right. Just outside of Melbourne in a place called Geelong. So if there's any surfers out there listening, they might know of Bells Beach. We're kind of near that. So outside of Melbourne, just outside of Melbourne, down toward the coast here, which is it's early morning for me. And I realize it's probably your afternoon. That's the beauty of being on the other side of the planet.
Right. Well, for you, you can talk as much as you want through the podcast because anyone with a foreign accent sounds better than Ben and I. So
it is a bit of an advantage to have something a little bit unique, isn't it? So the accent helps.
Yeah, it really does.
Yep, and mine, just because of how I inflect, makes it seem like I'm lying all the time. Apparently, all the studies. So the region that I'm from, everybody just they just tell it straight. So
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Wes, love to get to know you in a little way that we have come to call connection before content. Tell us something about you that wouldn't be found on your LinkedIn profile or resume.
Yeah, well, there's an interesting thing. So 3 years ago, maybe a little longer, I got a business valuation done, and it came in less than the assets that the business held, which I don't even know how that's possible. But it was a bit of a kick in the teeth at the time. What it was the valuer suggested that AI was a massive threat to the business and the whole industry, not just that I'd done anything wrong, but my industry being a digital agency, so designing websites and SEO and all that fun stuff. But he said people don't buy uncertainty, and that makes practical sense and perfect sense to me in hindsight. But at the time, it felt like, hey, man, I've been building this thing for a long time. The business is over 20 years old and really predictable, reliable income, and it's really steady growth over the years. So, you won't read that on the resume, will you? Hey, my business is worthless.
We certainly you don't want that. But what's something personal that people can connect with you on? What's something personal that you could share?
Something personal? Well, there's to go really deep in. I recently had a bit of a crisis time in my life. So, went through divorce, separation, all that kind of stuff, and probably a journey is kind of common in some ways to a lot of people, but really difficult time. And a lot of soul searching and thinking about my health and considerations of a whole lot of things to rebuild myself. Really, a lot of things had I let go of, my health and just basic things that I should have been looking after. So I just had to rebuild. Went to see a psychologist, all of that stuff. That was really brilliant in that she was quite progressive, a wonderful psychologist, and it was partially funded here in Australia. 6 sessions you get. Partially funded, which I did those 6 sessions, but she set me on a path of discovery. So I started doing breath work and cold plunges and sauna blankets. I don't know if you've heard of those, but it's like a sleeping bag, but it's a hot blanket, so infrared. All of these little things, micro things that helped me regulate myself. And as business people, it can be stressful, and particularly in that time with a whole bunch of other problems and things they're working through. Those little tips that she gave me are things I still use today, and they're things I'll take for the long term. They're really helpful.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that level of detail. Normally, when we ask that question, people tell us how many trips they've taken or what their hobbies are. Things of that nature. So thanks for digging deep here right in the very beginning. So
no problems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna ask you to dig deep again because now we want to know who you are as a person, not the role that you play in your company or other hats that you may wear there. So the first question then is describe yourself using characteristics, using words that describe you,
Yeah.
not tasks or actions, but words that describe you that you think people will say when you leave the room. When you leave the room, people would say, you know
Yeah.
that, yes, he is, and then now fill in the blank.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it depends on what context it is, but certainly I want to be known as a good father. And so, I mean, people might say those things if they see me interacting with my kids, but if that's not the case, they won't know that. Hopefully, they're saying that I'm a kind person, I'm honest, transparent, a people person, someone who's fun to be around. They're the things that I value: human connections and relationships. And in this crazy AI age, I'm sort of making sure that I focus on keeping relationships strong.
Great. And that's good. And then now you got to the second part, but you do that as a little tee up. Now, what roles do you play? And one of the roles you said is good father. So tell us
Yeah.
about some of the roles you play.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's obviously business has a massive part of everything that we do. The roles that I play in life, yeah. So a father, a son. These as a relational type of person, they're the forefront of in a new relationship now since the divorce and so on. Really thankful for that relationship because certainly in the earlier days I was a little bit burnt and probably a little bit difficult. All that those hard times in the initial phase. It can be difficult in a new relationship when you've potentially been bashed around a little bit,
Sure.
not physically, but
Yeah.
emotionally. So
Right.
yeah, so those
So what
things.
about what about in the business? So are you,
Professional hats.
yeah, are you entrepreneur, founder, CEO? Like what are some of those
Oh
roles?
yeah. So sorry, yeah, I don't really title myself, but when people ask, I'm the founder of the business. So I guess the director from a technical standpoint as
In what
well. So
industry?
doing a company. Sorry.
What's your
What industry?
Website design and development. So it's a digital agency effectively, but we drill into websites, SEO, and really niched into the trades and construction industries. They're who we serve the best. It wasn't always that way. We kind of evolved into finding what it is. I've got a small team with me supporting now. It started out as just a freelance kind of gig, just me in the evenings, and evolved to be a full-time gig, and then evolved to be more of a fully fledged business with people supporting me.
super? Now that was really great to give us an idea of who you are as a person, as far as your identity, and then some of the roles that you play. Now comes to the meat of the whole podcast. Ben,
Yeah, let's do it.
Nice.
Ben, what's the meat of the podcast?
We want to know what you are prepared to share.
Yeah, man. Thinking about the show beforehand, as I said, there were so many avenues I could take, but probably one of the more interesting and harrowing at times in business. So there was, at this stage of business, I had it was a few years ago now, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago now. Well, 10 years ago, I would say. I had a small team of developers with me, and I could see my lead developer, who was brilliant. He was getting a little bit bored with the work. He was really, really brilliant. And so the work is kind of repetitive. We have set processes that you've got to follow step by step to ensure that the outcome is always consistently reliable from a web development standpoint. And so I could see he was getting bored with it. And I was thinking, oh man, I don't want to lose this guy. He's a brilliant worker, so efficient, so fast, and knows a bunch of things that I don't know, which is always good to hire someone smarter than you in the field they play in. And this opportunity came up to do a website. They were seeking proposals for a website that was totally outside the scope of what we've ever done before, and really quite an in-depth and elaborate project. So it was a dating website. So it was, I guess, must have been 10 years ago, when it was before Tinder and all the apps were around anyway. So people were using websites to find people. And so this lady had been on TV, so she had a bit of a profile. She was on Farmer Wants a Wife. I don't know if you have a similar show where you are, but that was a show here in Australia. And so she had a bit of an audience, a bit of reach, and so she was setting up this business. And I got the opportunity to put a proposal in. And so I ran it past this guy, my lead developer, and said, "Hey, man, I don't know how to do this website, but I thought you would probably know how to do it." And he said, "Yeah, sure. Of course I know how to do that. It's blah, blah, blah. Had it, the software stack that we would use." And I said, "Brilliant. Do you want to put the proposal together? I've got no idea. Put the proposal together. I'll present it and see how we go." And we did that and won the project. And a couple of weeks into the project, he quit the job. So I was left with this massive task of building a site that I had no idea of how to build it. So, I mean, lesson learned the hard way, just stepping outside of our lane far too much. We got the project done. I barely slept in that time. It was a lengthy project, a few months. Barely slept, just figuring it out myself on the fly, and delivered. She sold that business actually and did really well out of it. But I really realized that I shouldn't take projects for the wrong reasons, and taking a project purely to keep a team member on board was the wrong motive. It's not what we do. It's not a great fit for our skill set. It's not the kind of work we normally do. So yeah, massive lesson. I'm glad I got through it. It cost a lot in terms of time, and also a lot of other projects I couldn't afford to take on board because I was just burning all my time and energy on this one thing. So yeah, lesson learned the hard way, as I say.
So let's go into some specifics on that. You said you lost some sleep, right? Which is, quantifiable. What, these other projects, things like that, what do you actually think it cost in monetary side, stress for the rest of the team? Like, what was this decision of you going out of your lane to kind of people please, right? Would that be a way that you made that choice?
Yeah.
And so what were the costs, overall costs?
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to put a value on it, but certainly there was no other new projects coming in. We have a steady flow of projects, that you win, and so that all dried up purely because I couldn't invest any moment in doing a quote or a proposal. And so the cost, I don't know, it would have been significant. It was over the course of a few months. We have recurring regular business as well. Maybe it was, if I had to guess, it might have been $60,000, $80,000 of down the gurgler kind of thing for the company. That's Aussie dollar, so it's a bit less. I think we traded about 60 cents to your dollar, something like that. So a fair chunk of change anyway.
So what was your mood like during that time? How did you show up as a leader, having made that choice, and then you had all this extra work to do? How were you reacting in that way?
Yeah, it was difficult, and so to stay calm and regulated and all that kind of stuff was probably more difficult, just out of being tired. But I don't think it affected the team too much. I took on the burden of it myself and tried to protect other team members from a lot of the heartache. So what I was doing was spending lots of hours figuring out what to do next, and then delegating aspects of what I could to the team. But they had a clear path of, here's what we need to do next. I just focus on this one thing, do that. And once that's done, I was figuring out the next steps from there. So I wore the burden myself. I don't think it affected the team too much. It certainly didn't affect the client. She had no idea of the heartache I was going through and the torment at that time.
So what were some of the things that you did for your team to make sure that they did not see a change in you?
Yeah, it was just to be mindful of the potential to, when you're tired, certainly when I'm tired, it can be grumpy. So just to make sure that I wasn't, I don't think at any stage they would have perceived the strain on me. They probably had an awareness that I was sometimes putting things into our project management system at crazy hours of the morning. they probably noticed that, but that's probably the extent of the visibility of what they had. I really tried to protect them as best I could, because the worst case scenario would have been to lose another team member. As a small team, one person is a massive proportion of your workforce. So, as a small business, it's really difficult to lose people.
Mm-hmm. And what would you, and I'm really curious because I'm sorry, Ben, then you can jump in, but I wanted to know, like, you took on this project to keep a person that you end up didn't keep, right? And then you weren't able to really continue the flow of new business because you were now distracted by all of that. So, what would you say to someone else who's listening? Because again, our audience are individuals who are in those late 20s and 30s who, they're not getting training and development, they're being passed over for promotion, they're having, maybe they take on a project that they shouldn't have taken on because they didn't know, or they didn't get the resource. What advice would you give to those individuals now who find themselves taking on something that they maybe shouldn't have taken on, but they wanted to do that just so they could stay employed?
Yeah, well, it's a really difficult path that all of us, certainly when we're starting businesses as well, it feels like most things are somewhat of a stretch and a challenge because everything's kind of new. It certainly was for me starting business. Everything felt like a bit of a stretch. So I suppose when this opportunity came around, it's kind of felt normal because I was always extending us a little further, step by step. But and I think that's part of growth, isn't it? It's kind of like working out. You go to the gym and you tear your muscles that little bit so that they will grow. And I think business and career paths are like that. You want to extend yourself to an extent in which it'll cause growth, but overextending will tear something and set you back a long way. And that's certainly what happened. So it's getting that balance right of figuring out how much you can take on, that's going to be a healthy growth phase of what you're doing, as opposed to something that will destroy you for the short term and set you back. Difficult to quantify and measure sometimes, because when you're taking on something new, it's hard to foresee everything because it's new. You don't know exactly, but I think it's part of growth. And even when you do bite off more than you can chew, you will get through, because there's no other alternative. You've got to get through. So that's part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Do you see this type of lesson being that kind of one that you can only know your limit once you've messed up and gone past it at least once? Like, is that a lesson that you can tell? Because sometimes, you get experience from messing up. So you have to, or wisdom from that in some cases. Do you feel that this is the type of lesson you only know how far you can stretch by messing up? Or do you think that there is a way to know where those limits are?
Well, a bit of both. I think I probably knew it was beyond us, and I should have thought through the potential risks. If the team members stayed on board, it would have gone so smoothly and it would have been a fantastic win for the business. But the risk aspect, I should have predicted the risk, because I was doing it to keep him engaged, because I could see he was potentially going to move on because he was getting bored. And so I should have foreseen that. I didn't. I guess some of it depends on the nature of who you are and if you kind of what your risk appetite is like. So yeah, I think now I kind of trust my instincts a little bit more and sit on things before I bite off something that's new and bold. I'll sit on it a little bit longer and make sure that I'm making the right decision. I won't rush into anything. I probably just rushed this one and didn't really consider all the risks associated with it.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One, we're in employee retention training, and there's a statistic that 50 to 60% of employees who accept a second offer or a stay offer from their company, like let's say somebody's trying to leave, they go get an offer with another company, they come back and then get a counter offer with their current company. 50 plus percentage of them still are gone within the next year after taking that counter offer, because the things that motivated them to leave were still in place, right? They're just saying, thank you for the extra money. I'll go use that while I find an even better job type of deal. So I can see
Yeah.
that being the same case. Like, one foot was already out the door, regardless of what you brought in. So that's
Yeah.
a good awareness tool that to go with your gut. That if they're disengaged, that's a different conversation. Not throwing treats at him, right?
Yeah.
Second question then becomes,
What was the question?
well, that wasn't actually a question. That was more of a statement.
It's more a statement.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
it's
that's
more
good.
of a statement.
Little,
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's so helpful. Absolutely, that's helpful.
Just a little note. We don't have 2 questions. We only
Yep.
have 1. Okay.
One
great.
question.
Okay. Gotcha this.
At what point after the project's over do you address the team to say, here's what happened? And were there any questions of them of like, oh, where is our new work coming, or how long do we have to wait for new projects? Like, when did you bring up how much you were actually going through?
Yeah, well, I guess I didn't in a way. I think they kind of saw that there was no new projects. There's the recurring work that we always do, so they were busy doing that plus this one project and I guess they would have assumed that it was well paid. I mean, they didn't see the proposal, the rest of the team members, so they might have just made the assumption that, hey, this was worth a whole, a massive pay. So that's why we're not doing anything else. So they would have made assumptions like that, presumably at the time. They wouldn't have known that, the time blew out so badly. They might have thought that that's what I was expecting and planning. I suppose to a degree, they would have realized, hey, the main man's gone. Things are different now, but they wouldn't have probably known how difficult it was for me. So yeah, so they just would have noticed, hey, we're finished this massive task that took all our time for the most part, and saw that new jobs were coming in after that.
I'd say one big leadership lesson is how much you took it on the chin and shielded your team from all the crap. So many folks want it all to go downhill, and because I'm dealing with this, and you could have handled this very differently. And so, I'd say, to the folks listening, your goal is to handle this stuff. And at some stages, I think it's okay to tell them afterwards, right? I believe you have a testimony after you've been tested, and you have a message after you have the mess. But
I love that.
I mean, not talking it through while it's happening. Get input if you need to, but the folks that may not have the emotional stability to handle what's going on, save that from them, and then get through it on the other side, and then you can share, and then you keep them from the crap falling downhill.
So I'm going to do a counter
Okay.
on that, and I'm going to say that I think that by not sharing it was okay, and the reason being is, at the leader, there is no lesson for them to learn unless you want to teach them about taking on jobs with responsibility. You want them to know that if you don't know how to do something, if I assign something to you and you don't know how to do it, then I want you to ask questions and to learn from it. I want you to know that I'm not going to give you something to do that you can't handle, so that you're reassuring them in those ways. That to me is the messaging, but that would come whether you were doing this particular project or not. One of the biggest issues that leaders have, or individuals who are these emerging leaders who want to eventually become a driving leader, is they take on work and pretend that they know what they're doing. They're afraid to ask a question because they fear that asking the question is a sign of weakness. But what I want them to hear is that pretending that you know what to do and then screwing it up is the weakness, not the asking for help. Because you need to develop systems to help you accomplish the things that you want to do in life. It's not just an action that you're going to take. Like when you said, I have determination, I have perseverance, I just had to figure it out. Well, that works for you, but that's not something that you can replicate for others. Because, well, what caused that determination, or what causes that? What you need to, what is helpful is helping people know that they're going to take it one step at a time, and they need to do as many of the steps as they can do on their own. And when they get to a place where they need help, then they should ask for the help. But I don't know that based on your situation, because I'm not like an employee listening to this, okay? And you're saying to me, well, let me tell you this story. I took on this website so we could keep Joe. Well, guess what? Joe decided to leave. And then people go, well, what about us? Like, you didn't take this on for me? Like, so that's why I would say, I don't know that story is a sharing story for others. But what I do agree with Ben is that as a leader, you should be transparent as of leadership things that you can take that moment and teach them how to make sure that they know what they're doing when they take on a project that you assign. But I don't think you needed to tell that whole story before they could figure it out.
Yeah, it's nuance and balance in everything in business and life, isn't it? So getting those things, more than one thing can be true. Sometimes it's about figuring out, and that's the piece of wisdom, isn't it? And we grow in wisdom to make the right decisions at the time. We make the best decisions we can at the time, but in hindsight, sometimes we grow in wisdom. So we might have done things slightly differently. I've had other team members as well, just to sort of speak to what you were mentioning, where they're just wired a different way to me. And some, I think of one person in particular, he's not with me either anymore, but he would just get overwhelmed if there was too many tasks on his plate. He was brilliant and he was fast at what he did, but if there was just too many things in the project management system assigned to him, he would freak out. So what I soon figured out, I think this is just a temperament. This is an aspect of who he is. He likes a set amount of things that he feels as though he can get done in the day, and he likes to feel as though his plate is empty at the end of the day. So I just really quickly realized, hey, just delegate things for him for that one day, or maybe the day or two, whatever it is. Sometimes things take more than a day. But just for the short term, I had in the back of my mind, there's a bunch of things I'm going to give to you, but just not yet, because it's going to freak you out. So some of these things you kind of learn as you feel through the journey. You know, different people have different temperaments, and sometimes an awareness of how much work there is will crush some people. So you just got to drip feed it to them, and that's how they best operate.
Yeah. So we really, Wes, what we appreciate is, you shared this moment, this mistake, this misstep, this mishap that said, I took on too much responsibility for something and I wasn't really sure how to do it. You kept it all internal. It cost you sleep. It cost you anxiety. It cost you an opportunity maybe to not have as many other projects flowing through the organization as you could have, may have impeded the amount of money that you could have made because maybe 20 other projects would have, smaller amounts could have caught, could have brought in more revenue. All right. So we get all of that. So what would you say would be one or two things that you would tell somebody how you're not going to do that one again?
Yeah, well, now we're really deliberate and intentional on the type of clients we work with. So the trades and construction, it wasn't always that way. I mean, that site I mentioned was a dating website. It's not something that excites me at all. That sort of industry is not what I want to help people with. I like to help, tradies, and we call them tradies, so tradespeople and construction and those kind of hands-on, practical, pragmatic people. That's just who I serve the best. People assume that I'm some sort of practical tradie myself, but I'm not. It's just that for whatever reason, I relate to these founder-led businesses really well. So I serve them really well. And after time, you sort of learn the different industries in that space and work out what works for them the best. So I think figuring out exactly what you want to, who you want to serve primarily, and what you want to deliver, and focusing all your energy and attention into that, and not being too distracted with other things that might not be your set path.
I love that because you can apply that to career. So for the individuals listening, thinking about the career, if you decide to take on a job that isn't in your desired career, then understand the choice or decision you made and what might be the unintended consequences. I have no problem if you choose a job because you need to make money. You just don't pretend to choose that job because you think it's going to lead to your trajectory of your career if it has no connection. So I think it's smart and wise to be able to do it. And one of the things that we didn't mention in here, but I will offer this, is when you take on something or being given an assignment you don't know, one of the systems you should look to is who. Who do you know that may have already done it that you can ask questions and you can learn from, so that you're not creating all of this energy studying and learning and everything by yourself. Find out people who have done this, because the Google search is like open available. I mean, you can ask. It's amazing what people may know or do, and following up with that. So just kind of wanted to add that little piece. And now we want to know as for those listening, how do they get in touch with you?
Our website's probably the best place, uplift360.com.au, being an Aussie business. And from there, people can book a strategy call with me and we can talk through their own circumstances and so on. There's also social media that you'll find there as well. So happy to connect. Even on LinkedIn, I know not everyone connects on LinkedIn to strangers, but I do. I'm happy to accept anybody.
And on LinkedIn, or is it just Wes Towers on LinkedIn?
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Okay.
That LinkedIn is on my website our website as well, uplift360.com.au.
And that's upload to
Uplift. Sorry,
Uplift.
that's the Aussie accent.
That's good. That's why we're clarifying. So it's uplift
360.com.com.
.com.au.
Yeah, that's it. The AU.
Australia, Austria.
Yeah, there we go. Great.
Yeah.
Well, that's super. And so, Wes, one of the other questions we love to ask is, all right, you prepped for our call today, which we really appreciated for this episode. What was a question you thought we would ask you that we didn't?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question you might have a lot of people do that rapid fire questioning, and so there's a lot of crazy questions that come out. A popular one is people like to know who influenced you the most. And I always say, Tim,
who influenced you the most?
Yeah. So I think when I read the book from Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Workweek, that was really influential. It was because of the timing in which I read it, but some of the practical tips in there. I enjoyed the style of writing, but I also enjoyed the thinking behind it.
Super great. Well, we really thank you for being a part of the Cohesive Leader podcast today. And we close out all of our Cohesion Culture programs with this simple mantra. You don't have to know everything.
You just need to be teachable.